Hey guys, tonight we drift gently back into the sunlit kitchens and open courtyards of ancient Persia, where breakfast wasn't just a meal, but a ritual, a daily affirmation of survival season and social standing. Imagine warm clay beneath your feet, the slow smoke of a cooking fire curling into blue sky, and the faint bleat of goats somewhere beyond the courtyard wall. You hear voices gentle teasing. Maybe someone is grinding barley. Maybe someone is calling you to rise. You're not in a modern kitchen. There's no espresso machine gurgling or toast popping up. No clock ticking down your commute. Instead, your morning begins with the sun, not an alarm, and the scent of flatbread crisping over flame. This isn't a hotel breakfast buffet, and truthfully, you probably wouldn't last a week here. There's no cereal. There's no sugar. You'll chew a lot of things you can't pronounce. And you'll do it sitting on a woven mat barefoot with a clay bowl in hand and a cat staring at your food. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and the time you're listening. I love seeing where and when you all tune in. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin in Persepolis, capital of a mighty empire, and at the moment, quiet. It's early. The kind of early where sunlight is warm but not hot, and the sandstone streets haven't yet turned to fire. You're waking in a stone house built into a hillside half-shelter, half-oven. The shutters are open to let in the breeze, and the first thing you hear is not a rooster, but the low hum of life beginning outside, footsteps, sweeping a wooden spoon tapping against a pot. Your host, let's say her name is Navasan, greets you with a tired smile. She's already been up for over an hour, kneading dough, feeding the fire, milking the goat. You were supposed to help. You didn't. She hands you a cloth and nods toward the fire pit. This is your first lesson in Persian breakfast participation. Meals are made with hands, not just consumed with mouths. She adds no words, just a flick of the wrist that says, get on with it. There's a small, round griddle over the fire. A flat stone, really. On it, a thin sheet of dough bubbles slowly, then deflates. She flips it with her bare fingers. You wince. She rolls her eyes. In this kitchen, pain tolerance is a seasoning. You ask her what's for breakfast. She shrugs and gestures to a wide platter already on the floor. Flatbread yogurt, fresh herbs bundled with twine olives floating in oil, and a tiny dish of something that smells sharp sumac you learn later. It's red as pomegranate seeds, and nearly as sour. This meal isn't about variety. It's about what's fresh, what's available, what didn't spoil overnight. Preservation is an art, but also a gamble. The yogurt smells safe. The goat milk hasn't turned yet. Good enough. You sit on a reed mat, legs folded beneath you. The bread is passed around. You tear a piece uneven, too large, amateurish. But Navasan's daughter grins. It's charming how bad you are at this. You dip the bread into the yogurt, then the herbs, then that red powder. Your first bite is earthy, sour, warm. Across the street, smoke curls from another rooftop. You see a boy climbing a fig tree, shaking loose fruit that lands with soft thuds on the ground below. A stray dog trots by, hopeful. He is ignored. In the distance, a conch sounds. Not a military trumpet, just a neighbor announcing that water is flowing again. You glance at the clay cistern in the corner, still half full. You're lucky today. Someone brings a tiny brass teapot. No tea bags, no sugar. Just bitter green leaves steeped so long the water is nearly black. You sip and blink. It's not relaxing. It's awakening. By now, the courtyard is alive. More children, more footsteps, more questions. Someone's singing while grinding lentils nearby. A rooster finally crows late and hoarse. You wonder if he too ate breakfast. Let's zoom out for a second. Historians have pieced together fragments of Persian breakfast, mostly through archaeology and travel accounts, rare as they are. The Greeks predictably wrote with grudging admiration. They complained about Persian luxury, but then copied their customs. The Persians, in contrast, didn't write cookbooks. Recipes were oral, generational. Scribbled in memory, not parchment. We know they ate barley, wheat, goat milk products, herbs like fenugreek and mint. We know fruit was prized, especially dates and pomegranates. They had no refined sugar, so sweetness came from honey tree sap and the fruit itself. Sometimes even flower syrup, like from rose petals, boiled slowly with water and resin. You see hints of all of this as Navasan prepares a second round of food leftovers mostly. More herbs. A boiled egg sliced in half and sprinkled with crushed dried lime. A handful of pistachios that taste oddly smoky. There's a debate among historians about whether the average Persian breakfast varied by class. Some argue the peasants and nobles ate strikingly similar meals, only quantity and spice differed. Others believe the elite dined on ingredients too rare for the working class, things like saffron-dried pike from distant lakes or imported nuts from Bactria. And yet here in this quiet home, it all feels egalitarian. The portions are small. The sharing is constant. You ask if there will be lunch later. Navasan laughs. Of course, she says, but not for you unless you help clean the courtyard. Your attempt at sweeping is tragic. You knock over a jar of pickled garlic. The smell could revive the dead. Navasan forgives you. Barely. She hands you a date. It's your prize for effort. It's sticky, caramel sweet, and hides a pit sharp enough to break teeth. You chew slowly. Somewhere a temple bell rings. And just like that, the day begins in ancient Persia. The scent hits you first, charred wheat, sweet smoke, and the unmistakable tang of yeast baking in the morning heat. Bread is not a side dish here. It is the table, the spoon, the plate, the main event. In ancient Persia, bread is life. And if you think it's just a bland disk of dough, you're in for a surprise. You make your way toward the clay oven, or rather the wap tanur, a deep, narrow beehive-shaped furnace set into the ground. It radiates heat like a small sun. Navasan's cousin, a wiry woman with forearms like marble, is already slapping dough against the inner walls of the tanur. She doesn't flinch. You do. The bread clings for a few seconds, bubbles audibly, then peels away in perfect golden ovals. You're invited to try. Bad idea. Your dough slips, falls into the fire pit, and earns a chorus of laughter from every angle of the courtyard. A small boy applauds ironically. A chicken struts by, completely unimpressed. This flatbread is called os nan-e tanuri, bread of the oven. It's been made this way for centuries, maybe millennia. Archaeologists have found similar tanners in Iran dating back to the 5th millennium BCE. Think about that, the bread you're holding now has changed less than your haircut has in the past 2 years. You taste a piece. It's warm, chewy, with just a hint of bitterness from the charred spots. No butter, no jam, no olive oil. Just grain water fire and air. Somehow, it's everything you need. You help brush the ash off fresh loaves using a bunch of dried thyme tied with twine. The smell is intoxicating. Suddenly, everything smells like thyme, even your hair. You're not mad about it. There's a legend told in this house passed down from grandmothers, who may or may not have been professional exaggerators. The more charred the bread, the more respected the baker. Because only a true expert can burn bread. Just right. Enough to flavor, not to ruin. And of course, only royalty eats the very first piece from a new batch. You notice the order of distribution. The eldest get first pick. Children last. Guests, meaning you are somewhere awkwardly in between. You're handed a piece by Navasan's son, with ceremonial solemnity, as if offering a holy relic. You accept it like a diplomat. Everyone watches to see your reaction. You chew thoughtfully. They nod. You've passed the test. Now, some historians argue that bread was made communally in village ovens, each family contributing dough and taking turns baking. Others say home ovens like this one were more common in middle-class Persian homes. What's agreed upon is that ghee, grain, barley, and wheat especially was the backbone of Persian cuisine. But here's where it gets weird. At least one clay tablet from the Elamite period describes bread perfumed with rose water and cumin used in temple rituals. Other sources mention bread made with ground lentils or fava beans, stretching out grain when harvests were lean. There's even an old soldier's rhyme etched into a tablet fragment that jokes about eating bread hard as enemy shields, likely referring to a field ration that doubled as both food and weapon. As you chew, Navasan tells you of bread made from leftover beer mash called al-kamir-i shirin, or sweet dough. Fermented dense and mildly intoxicating if eaten warm. You raise an eyebrow. She grins. We save that for festivals. Bread is also how debts are paid, or at least remembered. You watch as two elderly neighbors exchange small loaves instead of coin. A debt from last spring now squared. One owes the other 5 loaves for that time your goats ruined my herbs. It's not quite legally binding, but no one forgets. And of course, bread has its superstitions. Step on bread and your luck will sour. Burn it too much, and someone in the family might fall ill. Drop it. You must kiss it and hold it to your forehead before placing it on a high shelf. Apology accepted. You try another type. Nani sangak, bread baked on a bed of small pebbles each, leaving a dimple in the dough. It's crunchy, smoky, and wildly uneven. Each bite feels like chewing a piece of history. No two are the same. Just like people Navasan says. You wonder if she says that often, or just to impress you. Then comes the most controversial loaf of all. Ashy naan, or soup bread. It's not actually soup, it's just soggy. Torn pieces of bread soaked in fermented yogurt, garlic, and wild herbs. You try not to grimace. You fail. Navasan laughs again. It grows on you. You're not convinced. But the variety keeps coming. Some bread is sun-dried and stored for months. Some is made with poppy seeds, crushed nuts, or even dried fruit. In royal homes, bakers once pressed decorative seals into dough family crests, religious symbols, even poetic verses. The rich, it seems, couldn't just eat. They had to make it a whole performance. And yet the humblest bread wins your heart, a simple round of naan-i lavash, blistered on the outside, soft, inside, still steaming when torn open. You eat it with a chunk of goat cheese and a sprig of basil. The taste is honest. Like it isn't trying to be anything, just itself. You stretch your legs. The courtyard is bathed in gold now. Shadows have crept from the corners, and someone is chasing a runaway hen. You watch quietly, chewing slowly, and feel for a moment perfectly placed in time. You remember modern breakfast. Plastic bags, barcodes, a toaster that always smells faintly of regret. You compare it to this: sweat on your brow, flour on your knees, warm bread in your hand. Not better, just real. You wonder aloud why bread is so central to this world. Navasan's mother, who hasn't said much yet, simply replies, "Because grain doesn't lie." That shuts everyone up. You don't get long to digest. Just as you finish wiping your hands on a linen cloth that's seen better decades, Navasan hands you a wineskin. Except it's not wine. It's white milk. Specifically, goat's milk. Warm from the source and already beginning its slow transformation into something more ancient than your concept of breakfast dairy. Goat milk is thinner than cow milk, slightly tangy, and somehow earthy, as if the animal's memory of clover and hillside is still swirling in the liquid. You sip. It's a taste that bites back. Before you can ask for a cup, she tosses the wineskin onto a wooden hook dangling from a ceiling beam. It begins to swing, and then she slaps it. Hard. Again. Turns out you're making butter. The skin is sewn from goat hide and lined with sticky film from generations of fermentation. It squeaks with every swing. Navasan gestures for you to keep it going, left, right, like a slow-motion punch to the stomach of an imaginary goat. This is your job now. Get churning. Your arms ache within minutes. Someone laughs. You scowl. The skin is heavy and slick, and it leaks slightly from the seam. The butter won't form for at least an hour, but this is the ritual. Butter isn't churned in silence. It's done with conversation, teasing, and communal groaning about how sore your shoulders are. Meanwhile, the white yogurt is ready. In a clay bowl nearby, the goat milk that was left out overnight has thickened. Not spoiled, cultured. Sour, creamy, cool. A bit of water has pooled on top. It's not discarded. That's solway, and it will be used for yikash-e mast, a kind of yogurt soup, or maybe to tenderize meat for later. You take a spoonful. It's alive. Sharp and clean like lemon on the tongue. Navasan sprinkles, dried mint, and watch cucumber seeds on top. The result is something you'd happily serve in a modern brunch cafe for $12, complete with reclaimed wood and soft jazz. But here it's just breakfast. And then someone brings out the kishk. This is where things get challenging. Kishk is fermented dairy, but dried, rolled into little white balls, sometimes smeared onto cloth, and sun-dried into brittle sheets. It smells like parmesan left too long on a windowsill. It tastes like a barn, and yet you can't stop eating it. Quiche crumbles into warm stews, rehydrates into porridge, and dissolves slowly in your mouth like savory candy from another planet. It was beloved by soldiers, shepherds, and monks, high in protein, long shelf life, and absolutely an acquired taste. You ask if there's a sweeter option. Someone tosses you a fig. Sweet enough. You bite into the fig. It's dense, gritty with seeds and oozes molasses-thick nectar. It's the perfect contrast. In Persia, the lines between shao, sweet and sour, fresh and fermented, milky and nutty, are always blurring. Back to the butter, still not ready. Navasan hands you a switch of wood with a flat end used for skimming curds. You stir the yogurt slowly, scooping out thick layers and placing them into a bowl lined with mulberry leaves. The leaves infuse a faint herbal note and keep the yogurt from picking up flavors from the clay. She shows you how to fold the yogurt into shanch curd cakes, small hand-pressed rounds meant to be smoked over the fire for preservation. The smell is smoky, tangy, vaguely meaty. You'd eat these on the road, she says, or trade them in markets. One cake can buy you a bundle of onions or a half day of labor. That's breakfast currency. Now let's get nerdy. Historians are fairly confident that dairy played a major role in early Persian nutrition. Texts from the Achaemenid period mention state-issued rations, including milk curds and butter. Greek observers who wrote with the condescending tone of someone discovering hummus for the first time noted how barbarians loved sour milk. Jokes on them. Those barbarians mastered probiotic health 2,000 years early. There's an ongoing debate about whether early Persians domesticated their dairy animals locally or adopted pastoral practices from migrating Indo-European groups. Linguistic evidence suggests words for milk and curd spread westward from Persia, not eastward. But archaeological sites in Anatolia complicate that theory. So no firm answers yet, just plenty of curds. You now try your hand at making duko, the Persian ancestor of kefir. It's a drink, not a spoonable thing, diluted yogurt whisked with water, salt, and mint, served cold. It fizzes gently from light fermentation and is served in earthenware mugs shaped like tulips. You sip it and instantly feel your insides reset. You ask, did they drink this before battle? Navasan grins. Only if they wanted to stay near a toilet. Dairy, after all, is a gamble. You return to the wineskin. It's bulging now. You open the flap and smell something nutty rich. Inside, pale butterfat has begun to clump. With practiced hands, Navasan scoops it out and presses it into a bowl. She adds salt and dried rose petals, mixing gently with her fingers. The aroma is almost floral. You try a smear on warm bread. It melts instantly. Congratulations, you've made ancient butter. You think about this modern butter is uniform, pale yellow, plastic-wrapped, and mass-produced. This butter is a story, a sore arm, a morning's worth of effort, a whisper from a goat. You wipe your fingers on the edge of your robe and look around. It's not even mid-morning yet. You're still licking butter from your fingertips when the next wave of aroma rolls through the courtyard. Sharp, vinegary, fruity, and unmistakably pickle-ish. The morning meal, as you're now learning, doesn't stop at bread and dairy. No, the ancient Persian table opens its arms to the unexpected, which means you're about to eat pickles for breakfast. A low tray is set down before you. On it, small ceramic bowls of tursi, the Persian term for anything brined, soaked, or sharp enough to jolt your senses awake. Pickled cucumbers, sure, but also pickled walnuts, garlic plums, even melon rinds. It's a kaleidoscope of colors, murky greens, ruby reds, translucent yellows, and deep, inky purples. You're intrigued. You're scared. You proceed anyway. First up, pickled garlic. It's been aging for months, soaked in vinegar and colored nearly black. You bite. It's chewy, mellow, almost sweet, like a vampire's last supper. Next, pickled turnips, blushed pink from beet juice. Then a spicy carrot, somehow crunchier than any vegetable should be after a year in liquid. You ask who invented this. Navasan answers, a genius who hated waste, which is fair. Pickling is preservation. In a world without refrigeration, you either ferment or you starve. Especially in the lean months when fresh herbs wither and figs vanish from the trees. But the true jewel of the table, pomegranate. You've seen them before, of course, but never like this. These are cracked open not with knives, but with bare hands, thumbs pressing into leathery skin juice, exploding like fireworks. The seeds tumble out in clusters blood red and glistening, each one a tiny sour-sweet capsule. You bite down and the tartness floods your mouth, followed by that signature crunch, the edible snap of a fruit wearing armor. Pomegranate, or Einar, isn't just food. It's medicine. It's mythology. It's art. You've seen it etched into palace walls and painted onto tiles. In this culture, it represents fertility, wisdom, even immortality. And here it is casually eaten beside yogurt and bread as if it weren't sacred. You ask where it came from. Navasan says, always been here. Technically not true. Scholars debate whether the pomegranate was first cultivated in Persia or the Indian subcontinent, but it's agreed that Persians made it iconic. It appears in ancient medical texts, in Zoroastrian rituals, and even on the seals of Achaemenid officials. There's an old belief if you eat a pomegranate before speaking each morning, you will tell no lies that day. Navasan winks. I had 3, so you better trust me. You continue tasting your way through the spread. A bowl of ki zaytun parvarde catches your eye, green olives marinated in crushed walnuts, garlic, and pomegranate molasses. You scoop some with a torn bit of bread and nearly weep. It's salty, sweet, sour, and silky all at once. This is flavor theory before the French had words for it. Someone offers a wow spoonful of sour cherry jam, thick and almost black. It's a seasonal treat cooked down slowly over days until the sugar caramelizes and the fruit turns candied and soft. It's meant to be eaten with buttered bread, or just licked from the spoon, while staring wistfully into the distance. You ask about sugar. When did that arrive? Navasan's uncle, who has been quietly sipping dew in the corner, finally speaks. Too late. We were already sweet. It's a joke. Maybe. But he's not wrong. Refined sugar didn't reach Persia in large quantities until the Islamic Golden Age. Until then, sweetness came from ki, dates, figs, pomegranate syrup, and grape molasses, things that required patience, not plantations. Speaking of molasses, a clay pot is uncorked to reveal a viscous, dark shag grape syrup called shirin gur. It's sticky as tree sap and nearly as complex. You dip a wooden spoon in and drizzle it over crushed walnuts. The mixture is eaten slowly, reverently, like dessert disguised as breakfast. You're into it. And yet not everything here is soft. On the edge of the tray sits a small bowl of something intimidating. Pickled fish. Specifically, dried anchovies soaked in sour plum juice. You are warned. You are dared. You accept. The first bite is leathery. The second is briny. The third is oddly addictive. It's a relic of Caspian cuisine, where access to fish made coastal breakfasts quite different from inland fare. There in the north, a morning meal might include smoked sturgeon, salted mullet, or even wan caviar, though calling it that would make your hosts laugh. It's just fish eggs. You eat what's in the river. Historians are divided on whether pickling was seen as luxury or necessity. Some argue that elaborate pickled dishes were reserved for the nobility, showcasing wealth and trade connections. Others claim that everyone pickled something, and the real divide was in the flavoring: more spices for the rich, more salt for the poor. You now watch Navasan place a bundle of Watts grape leaves on the hot stone. Inside rice herbs, crushed barberries, and pickled lemon. Breakfast stuffed vine rolls. Steam escapes as they sear, lightly releasing a scent that hits you square in the comfort zone. You try one. It's tart herby, perfectly warm. You sigh. There's a silence across the courtyard now. That gentle post-meal lull where nobody speaks unless absolutely necessary. The chickens are dozing. The cats are plotting. Even the wind seems to move more slowly. You lie back against a clay wall, hands folded over your stomach, eyes half closed. Too much, Navasan asks. You nod, a little drunk on sour things and sunlight. She smiles and says, wait until lunch. Your nap, brief, involuntary, and deeply satisfying, is interrupted by a smell so warm, so familiar, it feels like it taps directly into your DNA, onions frying in oil. You crack one eye open. There's a pan, well, not a pan exactly, more like a shallow bronze skillet balanced over a modest flame, and in it a tumble of thinly sliced onions, turning golden, curling at the edges, singing softly as they release their sweetness. Beside the skillet, someone is crushing dried herbs between their palms. The scent of mint, tarragon, and dill floats into the air like incense. There's also something sharper, wild chives, maybe, or dried fenugreek, that slightly bitter green that smells a bit like maple syrup, but tastes like herbal defiance. Time to learn how we season the morning, Navasan says. She hands you a small bundle of sabzi cordon, the famous Persian herb platter, usually served fresh, raw, and plentiful. You look down and see a wild garden in your palm. Basil, cilantro, radish tops, watercress, green onion stalks, mint, even tiny unripe grapes that crunch like sour candy. This is not garnish. This is breakfast. You eat them wrapped in bread dipped in cheese, or just by the handful. It's an herbal reboot for your palate, and frankly, your soul. Each bite is vivid, like chewing through sunlight and shadow at once. The onions are browning now, deep golden and slightly blackened at the edges. Navasan scrapes them from the pan and drops them onto a plate lined with paper-thin bread. You watch as someone cracks duck eggs into the same skillet, letting the whites hiss and the yolks sit high and proud like royalty awaiting their audience. Duck eggs. Yes, bigger than chicken eggs, creamier too, with a richness that lingers. They're a luxury, but not uncommon in households with ponds or access to nearby rivers. The eggs fry beside a heap of crushed walnuts and dried barberries, those tiny crimson jewels so tart they make you blink. Everything is cooked together in a swirling mixture of oil and spice, then heaped onto fresh flatbread with a dollop of yogurt on top. This is the Persian version of shakshuka, but without tomatoes. It's richer, quieter, and somehow more grounded. It doesn't shout. It hums. You try a bite, then another. Your eyes water. Not from heat, but from some kind of nostalgic recognition you can't explain. This tastes like something ancient and honest. Like truth if truth came with crispy onion edges. Navasan hands you a slice of preserved lime. You're told to chew it between bites. It's intense, sharp, bitter, and deeply fragrant. In Persian cuisine, limu, amani. Dried lime is both flavor and medicine. It helps digestion, cools the body, and wakes the spirit. You wonder if it could solve your tax problems. It feels that powerful. You look around. The courtyard is busy again. A teenage boy is plucking fresh corianders from a rooftop pot. Someone else is mashing roasted garlic into oil, with the back of a spoon adding a pinch of salt and what looks like crushed rose petals. This will become a condiment served on bread or stirred into yogurt. Suddenly, someone sneezes violently. 3 times. They're grinding black pepper with a stone pestle, and the resulting cloud has no mercy. You laugh. So does everyone else. You're beginning to feel like part of this family. Now comes the frittata moment, except here, it's tokuku sabzi. A densely packed herb and egg dish crisped on the outside green as moss on the inside. It's a kind of breakfast cake, studded with dried cranberries, walnuts, sometimes even fenugreek seeds. You slice into it and steam escapes in a puff of chlorophyll. Historians still argue about the origins of kuku sabzi. Some trace it back to Zoroastrian ritual meals, especially during Nowruz, the Persian New Year. Others think it evolved later, influenced by Central Asian or Kurdish cooking styles. But the consensus is this kuku is one of the most quintessential expressions of Persian herbs. And it's delicious. You notice that nothing here is wasted. The eggshells are crushed and added to compost. Herb stems become broth starters. The oily pan is wiped out with leftover bread, which is then fed to a lucky dog. Even the onion skins are dried for dyeing cloth later. This is a cuisine born from reverence. Every ingredient is a gift, not a given. And the spice.
Ah, here comes the spice.
A small box of advieh is opened. Persia's answer to garam masala. Inside, cinnamon, cardamom, turmeric, dried rose, nutmeg, coriander, and cumin, all ground so fine it's like powdered history. You pinch a bit, you taste, you blink. It's warm, floral, earthy, and a little intoxicating. One dish is sprinkled with sumac, another with nigella seeds, sometimes called black cumin, or more whimsically, the seed of blessing. The flavors build like layers in a soft morning song. No one flavor dominates. They dance. You return to the eggs now cooling. Tear off a piece of warm bread scoop, up the yolk, drag it through herbs and onion. The combination is ancient, effortless. You chew slowly. There is no rush. Someone hands you a fresh sprig of tarragon and tells you to sniff it before eating. It prepares your mouth, they say. You do. It does. Now someone mentions fenugreek tea. You're dubious. They brew it anyway, light golden bitter, slightly sweet. It tastes like waking up in a field. You drink the whole thing. The courtyard quiets again. Another round of tea, another few minutes of sun creeping across the flagstones. A nearby dog yawns with operatic flair. You mimic it. Someone laughs. You close your eyes. Inhale mint. Exhale onion. You are full, but not just in your belly. Something deeper has been fed. You wonder how you'll go back to cereal. You'd think by now your body would raise a small white flag of surrender. But just as the herb-slicked cuckoo sabzi settles in your stomach and your brain begins composing thank you notes to every goat and onion you've met so far, a soft voice interrupts your haze. Dessert, Navasan says, holding up a bowl. You blink. It's chan dates. Not the squishy supermarket ones you remember from your last failed attempt at healthy snacking. These are Persian dates, plump, nearly black, glossy as polished stones. You pick one up, it collapses under the lightest pressure, revealing a caramel center, so sticky you can feel it before it hits your tongue. You bite, and the world slows down. The sweetness is unlike sugar. It's deeper, earthier. Almost like maple syrup met roasted coffee, and they had a sun-drenched child. No wonder dates were revered, sacred even, in many ancient Persian texts. Some were used in temple offerings. Others were mashed into paste rolled in sesame or blended with almond flour to create the earliest breakfast energy bars. You ask where these came from, Kerman someone says. Or maybe Bam, hard to know. The merchant was vague. Apparently even ancient supply chains were full of mystery. A small dish of roasted pistachios appears beside the dates, followed by walnuts, dried mulberries, and oddly, a few slices of smoked cheese. The contrast is deliberate, sweet, rich fruit paired with earthy nuts and salty bites of dairy. It's a reminder in Persian food. Opposites marry beautifully, but you're not done yet. Next comes a silver spoon filled with a grape molasses, called doshab, drizzled over slices of firm white cheese. The molasses is thick, nearly black, and smells faintly of raisins and firewood. One bite, and you're in a different quadrant of your palate. It's sweet, yes, but also smoky, musky, and slightly acidic. Paired with cheese, it tastes like autumn mornings and lazy fireplace evenings. This isn't just dessert. This is breakfast architecture, each item building off the last. Now Navasan shows you something strange. A wooden tray filled with dried melon slices. They look like shrunken crescents of the moon. She says they were left in the sun for 5 days, turned each morning, and rubbed with a mix of salt and mint water to keep insects away. You bite in. It's leathery, chewy, intensely melony, like someone whispered summer directly onto your tongue. You're handed a cup. No handles, no pattern, just warm date syrup tea. Water steeped with crushed date pits and leftover pulp. It's not flashy, but it's soothing, like the edible version of a lullaby. And then you hear it, the low, slow rattle of palm leaves in the breeze. You turn toward the edge of the courtyard, where a narrow trail winds down to a grove of shaj date palms, their fronds swaying like lazy dancers. Navasan gestures for you to follow. You walk barefoot. The earth is soft, packed with fine sand and fallen fruit. A few bees buzz nearby, uninterested in you, deeply committed to a half-split fig on the ground. The trees are massive, some over 40 feet tall, their trunks covered in old fiber wraps and climbing ropes. A young boy, probably 10, maybe 30, hard to tell with that sun-drenched face, waves from the top of one. He's harvesting dates with a small sickle and a woven basket. You're told he's been doing this since he could walk. You believe it. The Porsche date palm isn't just a tree. It's a key pillar of civilization. Without it, large swaths of Persia would never have supported settled life. Dates provided sugar, energy, shade, building material, animal feed, even alcohol. Yes, date wine existed, and it was apparently strong enough to inspire both poetry and poor decisions. You sit beneath one of the palms, munching on a wow stuffed date, filled with ground almonds and crushed rose petals. It tastes like the kind of thing that makes you feel oddly noble, even if you're sitting in yesterday's clothes. You ask how long dates have been cultivated here. Navasan smiles. Longer than language, she says. Not far off. In fact, date palms are referenced in ancient Sumerian texts from 5,000 years ago, and Persian farmers mastered their cultivation well before the Achaemenids made administrative paperwork stylish. There's a scholarly debate still simmering. Were Persian dates more prized for trade or ceremony? Some argue the elite ate them as part of sacred meals. Others say they were common fare, just a sturdy, high-energy crop that traveled well and rarely spoiled. Evidence suggests both. You lean back, hands sticky, eyelids heavy. The light has changed softer now, gold melting into amber. Somewhere, someone is slicing apple slices and drying them on flat stones. A jug of sour rosewater sits nearby, ready to flavor tomorrow's yogurt. You think about how fruit here isn't merely a treat. It's preservation, devotion, and memory. Every slice sun-dried and saved is a promise to winter we're ready. Before you head back, Navasan hands you a small cloth bundle. Inside, 1 fig, 1 date, 1 wedge of smoked cheese. Snack for later, she says, in case the next part of breakfast is too weird. You raise an eyebrow. She just smiles. The walk back to the house is slow, like time itself has softened. You feel full, but curious. What could possibly come next? Spoiler, it's porridge, but not the kind you know. The house greets you again with the subtle gurgle of something bubbling, slow, heavy, and deliberate. It's not stew. It's not tea. It's something in between. You approach the fire pit. There's a bronze pot, wide and squat, with a thick, blackened bottom that looks like it's lived 1,000 mornings. Inside is a slow, simmering porridge, but don't let the name fool you. This is no instant oat mush. This is halim-e-denai, a grain and legume blend so ancient it predates your need for coffee. You peer inside. It's beige-ish, dotted with flecks of green lentils and crushed chickpeas, shot through with what might be cracked wheat, or maybe barley. The true heart of Persian breakfast. The surface steams gently, burping tiny bubbles of earthiness. A wooden spoon leans against the pot, stained from years of stirring. This spoon has seen things. Your turn, Navasan says, handing it to you. You stir slowly. The mixture is thick, almost stubborn. It resists, then yields, folding over itself like a soft whisper. The scent is nutty, savory, faintly sour from fermented whey added during soaking. As you stir, a child brings over some tiny satchel of spices. Inside were turmeric and cinnamon, black pepper, and something sharp and citrusy likely, ground dried lime, again. You're told to add a pinch of each. More cinnamon if you want to remember your dreams, the child says, completely serious. You oblige. Halim has history. It's one of those dishes that wears time proudly. There's record of its ancestor Karissa being eaten in Mesopotamia thousands of years ago, and Persian versions likely go back just as far. It was breakfast for king's scholars and soldiers alike. Easy to make in big pots. Easy to carry in the belly. Hard to forget. Some scholars argue Halim began as a Sasanian military ration, high protein, easy to digest, and endlessly variable. Others trace it to temple food, an offering to fire, and gods shared communally in pre-dawn rituals. The truth is likely both. Persian cuisine, like Persian life, rarely fits into a neat category. You ladle the halim into a quiche clay bowl. Someone drizzles it with ghee clarified butter and giddy date syrup, yes, sweet and savory. You raise an eyebrow. They nod. You'll understand, they say. You take a bite. And yes, you understand. It's comforting. Warming. The kind of food that sits low in your stomach and says, "Don't worry, I've got this." The butter adds richness. The syrup, a whisper of sweetness. The cinnamon lingers like a lullaby. Alongside it, you're served something unusual, a cup of shea grain brew, a hot drink made by toasting crushed barley and steeping it like tea. It smells faintly of roasted nuts, tastes like the ghost of coffee, and leaves a smoky afterglow on your tongue. It's what ancient Persians drank when coffee didn't exist. There's debate among food historians about whether this barley brew was ceremonial or just a comfort drink. Some link it to Zoroastrian purity rites, others to pre-market breakfasts. Either way, you're into it. It's bold without caffeine, strong without aggression. You ask if there's anything else like it. They show you a porridge version made with poppy seeds and crushed almond skins. It's reserved for festival days, light, slightly sweet, and perfumed with white rose water. You get a spoonful. You're pretty sure this is what clouds would taste like if they were edible. Someone else offers you a strange chunk. A grain bar made of pounded wheat pistachios and honey wrapped in mulberry bark. It was meant for travelers, messengers, and soldiers on the move. You chew. It's chewy, a little gritty, but very portable. And this sparks a memory for someone. An elder in the corner begins to tell a story how his grandfather long ago marched with soldiers from Susa to Ekbatana, carrying nothing but these grain cakes and a pouch of smoked yogurt powder. They drank water from goat skins and made porridge on the move by shaking yogurt into it while they walked. No spoons, he says, just fingers. You feel a strange awe, not at the hardship, but the ingenuity. Another dish appears. Simit? A ring-shaped bread coated in sesame and dipped quickly into warm barley milk. It's chewy nutty, like a distant cousin of the modern bagel. The sesame seeds crackle in your mouth like tiny fireworks. You're starting to realize Persian breakfast is less a meal, more a deep morning meditation, a layered experience of textures and temperatures, sweetness and sourness, heat and rest. Someone suggests a dab of sour cherry paste into the halim. You hesitate, then try. It works. Another adds shaved radish and yogurt whey. It also works. There is no fixed formula here, only watch balance. You ask if these traditions still live today. Navasan nods. Some homes still start this way. Some don't. But the soul of it grain yogurt herbs that never leaves. Even in modern Tehran or Isfahan, many households still begin the day with non-mast and sabzi. A piece of bread, a spoon of yogurt, a bite of fresh herbs. The echoes of ancient kitchens are louder than you thought. Back by the pot, the halim is beginning to crust along the edges. This is a good thing. Those crunchy, caramelized bits are prized. Someone scrapes them gently, folds them into bread, and hands you a piece. It tastes like time well spent. You sigh deeply. There's a small nap building behind your eyes again. But breakfast isn't over. Navasan leans over and whispers, "Next, fish." You blink. Fish. She nods. Breakfast isn't done until it confuses you. You believe her. You'd hoped, perhaps naively, that the fish comment was a joke. A cheeky afterthought. A playful bit of misdirection. It was not. The moment you re-enter the courtyard, a new scent greets you. Briny, smoky, and deeply marine. It wraps around your senses like damp sea air, unmistakable even in this dry inland climate. Someone lifts the lid off a clay pot, and there it is. Smoked fish. Still glistening slightly, its flesh pale gold, its scent rising in delicate spirals. The skin is intact, crisped at the edges, and the belly cavity stuffed with wild dill and wine-preserved lemon. You stare. The fish stares back. This one's from the Caspian, Navasan says, casually, pulling apart a fillet with a piece of flatbread. Lake trout. Or something close. We trade for it. You sit. The plate is passed. No utensils, just bread and fingers. You follow suit, pinching off a piece and tasting it cautiously. It's good. Salty rich, a little oily, but not heavy. The lemon brightens it, and the dill hums faintly in the background. You realize you've never had fish this early in the day. But here it fits. To your left, someone unwraps a weak banana leaf parcel. Inside is dried roe, pressed into a dark red slab and dusted with ground lime. This is fish caviar, the ancient way. Not spooned delicately over toast, but sliced, seared, and eaten warm. You ask if this is normal. For some regions, yes, comes the answer. Caspian families, southern villages near the Gulf. Depends where your river empties. It makes sense. Persia, after all, was vast, stretching from the waters of the Persian Gulf to the snowy caps near the Caucasus. Breakfast habits shifted like dialects shaped by trade terrain and climate. Along the southern coast, you're told breakfast might include salted anchovies, mixed into porridge or fried with fenugreek and onions. Sometimes they're wrapped in bread and taken to market a portable fish taco with a 2,000-year head start. In northern villages, smoked sturgeon and mullet were common caught fresh and cured overnight. One old tale describes a Persian prince refusing to eat fish before noon, only to be scolded by his advisor. A wise man eats what stays good without fire. That's a neat way of saying how smoked fish won't kill you if the stove breaks. A new plate arrives. Rice cooked in fish broth. Tinted yellow with turmeric and topped with crisped fish skin. On top, caramelized onions, garlic, and a single hard-boiled egg sliced with surprising precision. You try a bite and understand immediately. The rice is silky, the broth absorbed into every grain, the egg a creamy punctuation. It's morning paella with Persian soul. You ask, do kids eat this? Someone snorts. Some do, some cry. Some trade it for yogurt and dates. You respect the honesty. There's one more dish. It's odd. Cold fish soup. Made from dried fish flakes, rehydrated in water, steeped with dried herbs, garlic, and a splash of vinegar. It's tangy, vegetal, and unsettling at first, but then it grows on you like a challenge you didn't expect to win. You remember the scholarly debate around fermented seafood in inland empires? Many historians assumed it wasn't common, but recent finds of salted fish vats in Persepolis suggest otherwise. Trade routes from the Caspian and Persian Gulf brought seafood deep inland, often cured beyond recognition, and still highly prized. Some theories argue that fish was not just food, but also a symbol of rebirth, tied to Zoroastrian ideas of water as a purifying force. There's an old saying, if the fire is for the soul, the fish is for the body. You're not entirely sure what that means, but it sounds wise, so you nod anyway. Nearby, someone brings out a warm, cold yogurt sauce with chopped herbs and fish bits stirred in. It's ladled over crushed flatbread, creating a sort of breakfast stew. You're told it was once called abdu, though every village has a different name for it. You ask about leftovers. They laugh. There's no such thing as leftover fish, someone says. Only afternoon fish that pretends it wasn't breakfast. Apparently, much of what you've eaten today will find its way into lunch or dinner or tomorrow's stew. In Persian homes, meals are not discrete events, but flowing continuums. The line between breakfast and lunch is as thin as a fig leaf. You help clear the plates, or rather scrape the last flakes of fish skin into a bowl for the house cats, who have suddenly become very attentive. As you rinse your hands, Navasan offers a final gift. Dried fish jerky, sprinkled with black sesame and crushed coriander. A traveler's snack. You chew it slowly. It's intense chewy, and a little ridiculous, but it keeps you grounded. You lean back, eyes toward the sky. So far, Persian breakfast has taught you that flavor is a journey, not a category. And sometimes that journey involves fish before sunrise. You ask what's next. Navasan smiles a royal breakfast. You blink again. There's more. Oh yes, she says. And the king didn't eat fish. Your mind is still wrapped around the idea of fish for breakfast when something shifts in the atmosphere. A certain precision enters the courtyard. The way the dishes are laid, the posture of the cooks, the quiet hush from the children. Even the chickens seem more dignified. Navasan adjusts her shawl, nods at you, and says with mock ceremony, "Today you eat like the Achaemenids." You're ushered to a mat that's been dusted clean and freshly perfumed with crushed basil. A tray is brought out, not wooden or clay this time, but metal, finely engraved with floral motifs and lion paws around the rim. You notice immediately. The portions are smaller, but the ingredients are rarer. this is a royal breakfast, or at least a humble reconstruction of one. Because let's be honest, real Achaemenid kings ate at tables surrounded by foreign dignitaries, gold cups, and scribes, recording every burp for posterity. But the spirit of their breakfast that still lives. First up, quail eggs. Boiled gently in water scented with cinnamon and cardamom. They're peeled with patience and dusted with a powder made of dried rose petals, sumac, and wax-salted grape skins. You pop one into your mouth and feel the absurd luxury of it. Tiny, silken, fragrant. A complete sentence in a single bite. Then a thin slice of barley bread, but this one's been basted in saffron-infused butter before baking. It smells like sun and wealth. You're told that in the king's palace, saffron wasn't a flavoring, it was a bomb message. A floral signal of power. A spice so valuable it was once traded like gold measured in threads. Now a small dish of tea pressed yogurt cheese appears. It's firm pale and soaked in rose water and olive oil, topped with dried mint. It crumbles like chalk but melts like cream. Beside it, a small spoon of sweet carrot preserve flavored with orange blossom, cardamom, and a whisper of honey. Your eyes widen. This is breakfast. Someone nearby answers as if reading your mind. The king didn't do manual labor. He had time to appreciate things. You try not to feel personally attacked. Then comes a dish wrapped in grape leaves. You unfold it like a gift. Inside, steamed lentils, chickpeas, and cooked wheat berries, mixed with crushed pistachios and dried barberries lightly dressed in vinegar and oil. Every bite is textured, nutty, chewy, sweet tart, like a salad that studied abroad and came back with taste. You sip from a cup carved from pale green stone. It contains an infusion of sour orange blossom, steeped with pounded dried plum skins, tart floral barely sweet. The kind of thing you'd expect from a Michelin-starred spa retreat, not a desert empire 2,000 years ago. And the olives. Oh, the olives. They come stuffed with crushed walnut paste, then marinated in pomegranate molasses and a dash of ground angelica root. The flavor is strange, complex, a little bitter, a little sweet. The kind of bite that makes you pause and consider empires. Navasan's uncle, who has taken it upon himself to be your culinary historian, leans in and says, "The king's table had over 30 dishes at breakfast, but most were just variations on grain, dairy, fruit, or game. What made it royal was access and spices from India fruit, out of season wine, from Babylon fish, from the Nile." He points to a small square of cheap pressed grape pulp baked into a chewy wafer. That, from a recipe over 2,000 years old. The courtiers used to sweeten their porridge with it. You try it, it tastes like fig raisin in philosophy. Then comes the main feature, a warm bowl of barley porridge, but elevated cooked with almond milk, spiced lamb broth, and swirled with a puree of stewed quince. On top, a scattering of a dried apricot, sesame, and ground cinnamon. The spoon is wood, but carved delicately. You could be eating breakfast in a marble chamber barefoot and blissed out. Historians have debated what constituted luxury in ancient Persian breakfasts. Was it quantity, rarity, seasonality? But most agree the royal palate. Loved contrast. Rich with sour, sweet with bitter, crunch with cream. There's even a line from an old court poem. The king's meal is the color of many moods. You believe it. You're also somehow still eating. Now comes a flat disc of fried cheese, crisped on one side, sprinkled with ground cumin, and served with a smear of tamarind paste. You take a bite and your eyebrows jump. It's tangy, umami, and surprisingly modern, like something you'd find on a small plate menu in Istanbul. Beside it, a small jam made of rose petals, rhubarb, and posh grape skins, cooked down until glassy. It glows in the morning light like stained glass. A fingerful on a bit of flatbread, and suddenly breakfast becomes memory. You're not even sure what the memory is, just that it's warm, and your grandmother probably wasn't Persian, but she would have approved. A breeze rolls through. A linen napkin flutters. Someone pours saffron tea into your cup, golden, fragrant, quiet. You lean back. This breakfast hasn't made you full. It's made you so still. As the tray is cleared, you ask, "Did the king eat like this every day?" Navasan shrugs. Maybe. Maybe only when he had guests. Maybe this is just how we imagine he ate. But that's the thing with memory and food. We fill in the blanks with flavor. You sit with that. And then someone claps their hands. Time to go see how the workers ate. Because after all, breakfast didn't belong only to kings. The silver trays are gone. The saffron is packed away. Your tongue still carries a trace of quince and cumin, but now the energy shifts again faster, earthier, and more fragrant in a very different way. You follow Navasan down a narrow stone path beyond the courtyard, past tethered donkeys and drying laundry. The sun is rising higher now, and with it comes the clatter of tools, the murmur of men and women readying for the day's labor. You arrive at a silent work site on the edge of a field half construction, half agriculture. Someone's building a stone wall. Someone else is planting lentils. There's dust sweat and a wheelbarrow full of white dirt-caked vegetables, and there on a low flat rock a breakfast. Not gold-rimmed, not perfumed, but beautiful in its own way. It starts with thick flatbread, folded into quarters and stacked under a woven basket lid to keep it warm. This bread is darker than the royal version speckled with bran and baked hard at the edges. It's made from ob barley and wild emmer grains, easier to grow, easier to digest, harder to impress your in-laws with. You sit on an overturned bucket. Someone hands you a piece of bread and a lump of sog goat cheese, firm and sharp. No garnish, no rose petals, just salt, crumb, and tang. You tear the bread, pinch the cheese, and chew. A bowl of yao olives passes by, black, bitter, and wrinkled like old leather. They're oily and strong. You love them instantly. No frills, no ceremony, just fuel. There's a dish of yeetgum mashed lentils, slow cooked with garlic onions and a touch of sour grape juice. You scoop some with bread. It's warm and soft, seasoned more with memory than spice. One man tells you his grandmother called it ash-e-kargaran, worker's ash, a dish meant to be eaten with dirty hands and gratitude. You nod. You understand. Then someone brings a metal jug, not wine, not water. It's ghee, sour yogurt drink, diluted and salted. Yes, but this version is cloudy, barely chilled and perfect. The salt rehydrates the yogurt, soothes the gut. You drink deeply and feel your shoulders loosen. A small child runs by with a bundle of whucked radishes, just plucked. A few are thrown onto the blanket beside the bread. You eat one raw dirt, still clinging to the root. Peppery, crunchy cleansing. It reminds you of why the Persians loved key raw vegetables at nearly every meal. You notice no one has a plate. The food is communal. Bowls are shared. Bread is passed. Conversation flows around you like wind through reeds, low, constant soothing. People eat in turns. One eats, the other pours water. One breaks bread, the other slices cucumber. You learn fast. Sharing isn't politeness here, it's function. No one gets seconds until everyone's had firsts. And yet somehow everyone leaves full. You glance around the site. Someone's heating onion soup over a stone fire. Another tends to a cast iron pan where something like an omelet is cooking roughly beaten eggs with wild herbs and grated turnip. It smells like warmth and work ethic. A teenage boy hands you a chunk of dried yogurt ball. Hard as chalk, salty, funky. You suck on it like candy. It's strong. Probably illegal in 5 countries. But your mouth wakes up. There's talk among historians about how much class divided Persian breakfast. Was the food truly different, or just the plate it was served on? Some scholars argue the differences were minor. Grains, dairy, herbs, legumes. These were universal. What changed was quantity spice presentation. The king ate his yogurt with saffron. The worker ate his with salt. But both began the day with bread and milk. Others suggest a more significant divide. That the elite had access to preserved fruits, rare fish, and aged cheeses, while the poor ate simple stews and leftover grains. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. And right now you're sitting in that middle. A man slices a boiled egg and offers half to you. No salt, no garnish. Just egg. You accept. You don't realize until halfway through that you haven't spoken in minutes. You've just been eating, nodding, breathing. It's peaceful. Another bowl arrives. Black-eyed peas, tossed with vinegar and tarragon. Cool, firm, sharp. It wakes you from within. You go back for seconds. Someone nearby hands you a small, flat cake of dried fig and walnut tied with string. It's a pocket breakfast designed to travel. Soldiers, messengers, and shepherds all carried versions of this simple, durable, and naturally sweet. You tuck yours into your belt for later. You feel mildly heroic. Now tea. Not served in delicate porcelain. It comes in a clay cup, scalding hot, steeped with dried sage and charred thyme, sweetened not with sugar, but a chunk of scraped molasses, dissolved slowly at the bottom. You sip. It's grassy. It's smoky. It's life-giving. You ask a woman nearby what her family eats on cold mornings. She smiles and says same thing, but with more lentils and more laughter. That's the secret, it seems. Royal breakfast impresses. Workers' breakfast endures. And when the sun is high and the sweat begins, the memory of a good breakfast becomes fuel, not just for the body, but the heart. You dust your hands, rise from your bucket, and smile. Navasan appears beside you with a sly grin. Now she says want to try breakfast with key spices that make you dizzy. You pause, nod slowly. Because of course. The phrase, "oh, spices that make you dizzy," should probably give you pause. But at this point, your trust in Navasan is complete. After all, she introduced you to pickled garlic for breakfast and lived to smile about it. You follow her through a winding alleyway lined with faded mosaics and crooked fig trees. Eventually, you arrive at a quiet courtyard, shaded by a tall mulberry tree, its fruit dropping softly onto the stone. A small fire smolders in the corner, releasing fragrant curls of smoke that smell faintly of cardamom wood and mystery. The table, or more accurately, the rug, is already set, and it is colorful. Small ceramic dishes crowd the cloth, each filled with powders, seeds, resins, and shavings. There's no bread in sight, no cheese, just spice. This is the apothecary breakfast, Navasan says. Not for every day, but good for cleansing, or thinking, or confusing your friends. You laugh nervously. She's only half joking. You're offered a cup of hot milk, frothy and steaming. Into it, a small spoonful of saffron and ground pistachio is whisked. The color turns golden, the aroma heady. You sip. It tastes like sunshine melted into silk. Next comes a small bowl of maize sugar crystals, soaked in rosewater and cinnamon, meant to dissolve slowly on the tongue between sips. They don't sweeten the milk so much as flavor your breath. It's not breakfast. It's alchemy. A pinch of jacked ground cardamom, mixed with crushed dates and sesame seeds, is rolled into a dense ball and placed in your hand. For clarity, someone says. You eat it in one bite and instantly feel like a philosopher. But it gets weirder. Someone hands you a thin slice of sandalwood bark, soaked in fig syrup and dusted with nutmeg. It's chewed slowly, not swallowed. It's bitter, warming, and oddly floral. Your head feels a little light, not in a dangerous way. In a maybe-I-can-read-ancient-scrolls-now way. Next comes a dish you're warned about. Crushed coriander seed mixed with poppy seed oil, a bit of a vinegar, and a single preserved damask rose petal. You spread it thinly on flatbread, finally bread, then roll it into a scroll and eat it in 3 bites. It tastes like a dream sequence. You close your eyes, and it's as though your mouth is traveling faster than your brain. Tangy, bitter, sweet, earthy, all at once. You open your eyes again and blink at Navasan. She smirks. Told you. There's an ongoing debate among historians about how spices functioned in ancient Persian diets. Some insist they were primarily culinary, flavor enhancements, preservatives, or simple luxuries. Others argue many spices were considered medicinal, used in morning meals not to nourish the stomach, but to awaken the mind and balance the body's humors. A third camp, less academic, more poetic, believes spices were about sensation, a way of aligning with the elements, fire in the cardamom, water in the rosewater, earth in the cumin, air in the steam rising from every cup. This morning you belong to all 3 camps. More spice offerings arrive each stranger than the last. and dried orange peel dipped in pomegranate syrup and dusted with crushed fennel. A tiny spoon of wasp black cumin mixed with rock salt to chew between bites. A kind of sweet resin, similar to mastic that freshens the breath and clears the sinuses when chewed. Dried tamarind pulp, smeared on slices of boiled egg, an unlikely combination, but one that works in ways your modern palate can barely comprehend. You're given a moment to rest. The air smells like 7 different kinds of morning. Someone pours a fresh tea. Anise and caraway. Brewed in a clay pot and sweetened with honey so dark it's nearly black. You sip. It tastes like memories of winter, even though the sun is beating down outside. Then comes something softer. A small bowl of sweet porridge made from rice flour, almond milk, and saffron, topped with a single sprinkle of cinnamon and ground poppy. It's smooth, comforting, like eating silk. You ask what it's called. It doesn't have a name, Navasan says. Just something we make when someone needs rest. And that's the real truth of this breakfast. It isn't about sustenance. It's about balance. About finding a rhythm between wakefulness and stillness. Every bite doesn't push you toward productivity. Some pull you gently inward to reflection or calm. You notice your body is warm, your mind alert but unhurried. You feel present. Every sense awake. The food wasn't heavy, but it filled something you didn't know was empty. You ask if this meal is reserved for religious occasions. Navasan shakes her head. No, it's for mornings when the heart is too loud. You nod slowly. Nearby, someone's grinding more cardamom with a mortar shaped like a pomegranate. Another person is heating dried mint and vinegars together in a small pot used to clear the head, you're told, especially after late nights or emotional dreams. You watch. You breathe. You sip another tea. The courtyard is quiet again. And then someone says softly, Nowruz is coming. You glance at the calendar scratched into a wooden plank. The Persian New Year is near, which means an entirely different kind of breakfast is on the horizon, one built on symbols, spring and rebirth. You sit forward interested. Navasan smiles, ready to cook with flowers. The courtyard has changed. It's subtle at first, just a few extra blossoms tucked behind bowls, some green shoots in repurposed clay pots. But the energy feels unmistakably different. Lighter, expectant. There's a crispness in the air even as the sun climbs. Somewhere a child is stringing tiny flowers onto thread. A cat is batting at one end. Nowruz is coming. Navasan repeats, hands deep in a basin of fresh herbs. The Persian New Year, the first day of spring, the rebirth of the world. And it starts as everything good in life should with breakfast. This isn't just another morning meal. It's a ritual. Every dish on the Nowruz table is symbolic. Every herb, spice, and egg carries meaning. And as a guest in this house, historical tourist or not, you're about to help make it. First up, sabzi polo. It's technically a lunch dish, but in this house and many like it, leftovers are prepared early and eaten in the hours after sunrise to welcome the day, the season, the light. You help chop dill, parsley, coriander, chives, and fenugreek into an emerald mountain. The smell is sharp, grassy, and nostalgic for something you've never lived. These herbs are folded into steamed rice, layered in a heavy-bottomed pot and left to develop that golden tahdig crust that Persian cuisine is known for. It crackles when flipped, revealing a crispy base kissed with butter and turmeric. You sample a spoonful while it's still hot. The flavor is herbaceous light and completely pot green, not just in color, but in spirit. It tastes like the first day you open all your windows after winter. On the side, sliced cucumbers, tossed with dried mint and verjuice, a sour grape extract used in Persian kitchens like vinegar. Light, tangy awakening. Then comes the shower's symbolic platter. You've heard whispers about it all morning, the horn-haft scene. 7 items beginning with the Persian letter S. Scene, each representing a concept, rebirth, love, patience, medicine, age, brightness, and purity. You help prepare some of them. Sabze, sprouted wheatgrass, grown days earlier in a shallow dish. You trim the edges like it's a houseplant with hopes. Sear, garlic, not just as food, but as an emblem of health. Senjed, oleaster fruit for a love and sensuality, apparently. You taste one. It's dry, leathery, and oddly sweet, like a date that spent a few years meditating. Samanu, this one is special. A pudding made from wheat germ, slow cooked for days until it becomes thick, sweet, and brown like molasses. You taste a spoonful. It's warm, sticky, and deeply comforting. Serke, vinegar sharp, sour, and honest, representing age and patience. Sumac, astringent and tart to remind us of the sunrise after a dark winter. Seeb, apple, rosy, crisp, and fresh. For beauty, for clarity. These aren't all eaten in one sitting. Some are ceremonial, but some, like samanu and sumac, end up in breakfast dishes you're helping stir. You move on to the Yiji egg station. Yes, that's what it's called now. Dozens of eggs are boiled then. Dyed with natural pigments. Onion skins give them a deep bronze. Beetroot turns them pale magenta. Spinach stains them green. You roll them carefully in soft cloths and leave them to dry in the sun. These will be cracked and eaten in the days to come, usually with flatbread cheese and laughter. Some are placed whole on the half-seen table, not for eating, but for wishing. One per family member. Each person will crack their own at dawn on Nowruz, hoping for no cracks in the shell, an omen of health and strength in the year ahead. You help assemble a sweet platter. Dates stuffed with crushed nuts. Rosewater-laced halva and tiny fig rolls tied with kitchen twine. These are for guests, for neighbors, for visitors who bring their own symbolic dishes. Then there's the herb omelet, a lighter version of kuku sabzi. This one is sautéed in a bit of walnut oil, heavy on parsley, and mint folded gently into beaten eggs, and cooked until just set. No crispy edges today, this one stays soft, delicate, a spring green whisper of a dish. You eat a slice with pickled onions, and watch someone decorate the half-seen table with key coins, candles, and a mirror. Not food, but important. The mirror reflects new light. The coins bring prosperity. The candle, hope. Even the meals carry hope today. Navasan says placing a bowl of fresh yogurt on the table, topped with crushed, dried rose petals and a single saffron thread. It's beautiful, an offering as much as a dish. There's music playing now. Gentle old. Strings and hand drums. The kind of tune that feels like memory. Everyone seems to move slower, not out of fatigue, but reverence. Spring has arrived, and with it the understanding that food isn't just fuel, it's meaning. Historians note that Persian New Year breakfasts are less documented than the feasts that follow. Most records focus on the lavish banquets, the stews, the mountain of rice. But within families, the quiet Nowruz morning, shared with herbs, bread, and reflection, is remembered most. You sip tea infused with yeast bitter orange blossom, sweetened with wash-dried mulberry syrup. It's floral, slightly bitter, and oddly moving. Navasan hands you a final treat, a tao flower jam made from violets, cooked slowly with sugar and water until translucent. You spread it on warm bread and taste spring itself. As you sit, bellies full air thick with the scent of saffron and soil, someone lights a sprig of wild rue, its smoke cleansing, protective, ancient. You close your eyes and feel the moment settle. This isn't just a breakfast. It's a blessing. The Nowruz feast lingers in your senses like a dream floral jam on your lips. Saffron in your breath, a whisper of sour grape in the back of your throat. But spring has a way of passing quickly in this land. The air sharpens slightly, and the rhythm of the courtyard shifts once again. More practical, more mobile. Today's breakfast isn't tied to the kitchen hearth or ceremonial table. Today you hit the road. Navasan meets you by the gate with a cloth satchel and a crooked smile. "Let's see how the caravan eats," she says, tying the bag shut and handing it to you like a sacred text. The Persian Empire, after all, was built on movement, traders, soldiers, messengers, monks. Roads like the Royal Road stitched the empire together across thousands of kilometers. and those travelers, they still needed breakfast. So today you're learning how to eat on foot in the saddle, or sitting cross-legged beside a desert spring. You step into the morning light. The path ahead is dusty and sun-dappled. You walk. The satchel is opened under the shade of an olive tree, revealing a carefully packed travel breakfast, sturdy, portable, and durable as a horse blanket. First item, a stack of dry flatbread, non-e-koshk, thinner and tougher than the home version this bread is, twice baked, and then air-dried until nearly brittle. You're told that some pieces are soaked in water before eating, others chewed slowly like crackers. This one cracks like firewood between your teeth. You chase it with a gulp of diluted yogurt water from a flask. Next, a pouch of dried yogurt curds, chalky white and pebble-sized. These are kashk in their travel form, tart, salty, high in protein. You suck on one. It takes its time. This is slow-release nutrition, the ancient world's answer to protein bars. You're offered a slice of shosh preserved lamb fat, cured with coriander, salt, and a touch of sumac. It's rich, intense even, but paired with a bite of bread and dried radish, it balances into something surprisingly elegant. This is nomad food. Caloric, compact, and sustaining. Then comes a pouch of nuts and dried fruit, pistachios, walnuts, almonds, figs, apricots, and tiny, dried pomegranate seeds. The mix is sweet and sour, crunchy and chewy. It tastes like trail mix made by philosophers. You chew slowly, listening to birds argue overhead, watching ants investigate your sandal. Everything is quiet except the crunch of walnut and the soft rustle of the wind. Navasan offers a spoonful of honey wrapped in a fig leaf and sealed with wax. She cracks it open with a smile. The bee's breakfast. It's dark, thick, and wildly fragrant sunlight made edible. You learn that caravan breakfasts were often based on layers, grains, dairy fat, and sweetness, all in concentrated form. There's even a small brick of pressed lentils and wheat, cooked and dried into a dense square. You break off a corner. It tastes faintly of smoke and cumin. A full meal in a palm-sized bite. There's debate among historians about how uniform these road breakfasts really were. Did the king's messengers eat the same thing as camel herders? Probably not, but across class and distance the needs were the same: stamina preservation and calm digestion. You sip from a clay flask filled with the grape vinegar diluted in water, lightly sweetened with honey. It's bracing but refreshing, especially under the rising sun. You can imagine soldiers swigging this before loading their packs. Now comes something unexpected. A roll of yogurt leather. Yes, really. Spread thin on a cloth and dried in the sun as this tangy, flexible sheet is torn into strips and eaten with herbs or dates. You wrap it around a handful of mint and bite. The flavor is odd but addictive. Acidic, herbal, and deeply cooling. You rest beneath a fig tree. The sun filters through the leaves like light through green glass. Navasan pulls out one final item from the satchel, a small tin of pressed fruit paste, made from quince, grape, and carob. The merchant's dessert, she says. It's sticky, dense, sweet without being cloying. A slow treat for a long road. She tells you stories as you eat. Of camel drivers chewing dried yogurt between verses of poetry. Of traveling monks breaking their fast with vinegar-soaked chickpeas. Of queens smuggling honeycombs in silk-lined bags to sweeten the desert mornings. The Kwa Royal Road stretched from Susa to Sardis, and along it flowed not just goods, but flavors, recipes, and rituals. Breakfast became a kind of common language, a soft hand held out between strangers before the day's heat rose. You finish your meal. Your fingers are sticky. Your breath is herbal. Your heart is quiet. And for the first time you understand. Traveling breakfasts aren't just about what you carry. They're about what carries you. Tomorrow, Navasan says, we'll light incense before we eat. You tilt your head. It's time, she continues, to learn how the sacred greeted the sunrise. The next morning arrives with the kind of stillness that feels ancient. Not silence exactly. There are roosters. Distant voices, the ever-present shuffle of sandals on stone, but beneath it all is a kind of reverence. As if the day itself knows what's coming. You're led to a different courtyard, smaller enclosed, ringed by pomegranate trees, and burnt orange walls. At the center stands a modest altar, just a raised stone slab darkened by years of use. Upon it, clay bowls, bundles of herbs, and a single bronze brazier, its embers already glowing. Today, Navasan says we begin with the sacred. This is not temple food. Not quite. But it is yo spirit food. The kind of meal taken after ritual before work, or as a quiet offering to what cannot be named. Zoroastrianism. The ancient faith of Persia emphasized fire, cleanliness, balance, and the honoring of life through daily action. And that included how, when, and why you ate. Before breakfast, you wash your hands, not with soap, but with water infused with rose petals and bitter orange blossom. The scent stays on your palms long after the droplets evaporate. Someone lights a bundle of chai wild rue, esfand, in the brazier. It crackles sharply, sending up dark curls of smoke. It smells earthy, medicinal, faintly peppery. You're told it drives away the hot evil eye, bad luck, and sour dreams. This is not superstition. This is protection. As the smoke rises, someone chants softly. Not loud, not showy, just a rhythmic whisper in Savestan. The old sacred language. You don't understand the words, but the tone vibrates somewhere in your ribs. Then comes the kik offering, a plate of shal bread. Still warm, its surface brushed with bai ghee and dotted with jot dried thyme and shan nigella seeds. A small bowl of dolk milk, goat, slightly sweet. A sprig of fresh basil. These are placed beside the flame, not for dramatic sacrifice, but for connection. In giving, we honor, Navasan says. In eating, we remember. You sit cross-legged on a thin mat. A bowl is passed. Ashadu. A fermented yogurt soup cooked gently with rice herbs and a few soft chickpeas. It's tart warm and strangely serene. You sip, and it calms you more than any tea. The smell of rue still lingers. It mixes now with burned cinnamon bark, tossed into the brazier after the rue burns low. The smoke changes sweeter, dreamier. You breathe it in between bites. A dish of barley porridge arrives, this one sweetened gently with dried mulberries and topped with slivered almonds. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it feels grounded, like food you'd eat before making a decision that affects the rest of your life. Someone places a quiche bowl of soaked dates beside you. Inside are poppy seeds, a drop of vinegar, and a single clove. The flavor is strange, the texture soft, but your body oddly seems to know what to do with it. You ask, was this a priest's breakfast? Navasan smiles. No, a farmer's, a mother's, a poet's. Anyone who needed their first meal to also be a prayer. In Zoroastrian tradition, meals began with cleansing, and often a word of gratitude not necessarily spoken aloud, but held silently. You try it. Just before your next bite of herbed rice, you pause. You thank something. You're not sure what, but it feels right. Another bowl is passed. It's cheese. Aged slightly crumbly, dusted with sumac, and soaked briefly in sour plum vinegar. You eat it with a mint leaf and a folded strip of soft bread. The balance is perfect, sharp and soft, awake and settled. A small cup of sacred tea follows, steeped with chamomile, thyme, and ashes from the fire. A tiny pinch ceremonial strained carefully. It's symbolic, not medicinal. You sip. It's gentle. It tastes like in a pause. There's scholarly debate around how ancient Persian spirituality influenced everyday food. Some claim that early meals were divided into sacred and profane, some foods reserved for fire temples, others for daily use. But evidence suggests a blurrier line. Many families, especially rural ones, blended ritual into routine. Morning meals doubled as meat offerings, especially during seasonal festivals or after dreams with unusual symbols. Even today, some Persian homes burn isfand before breakfast, set out a dish of watch milk or herbs for the spirits, or begin with a silent moment facing the sun. Someone nearby cracks an egg into a hot pan of butter and fenugreek. The smell is golden green and rich. It cooks fast, and you scoop a portion onto your bread, topping it with crushed walnuts. It tastes like a spell disguised as a meal. You're handed a wee single rose petal dipped in syrup. Eat it last, they say. You wait. You finish your tea. Then place the petal on your tongue. It dissolves slowly, like a whisper of thanks. The bowls are cleared, the flame allowed to burn down. Someone rinses their hands again with flour water. The cat jumps up onto the stone, licks a bit of yogurt from a bowl, and is not scolded. You rise lighter than before. Not full, not hungry, just balanced. Navasan walks beside you. Tomorrow, she says, we eat in the war tent. You raise an eyebrow. She laughs. You'll see. You wake to a very different atmosphere. Gone is the gentle rustling of fig leaves and the soft perfume of saffron tea. Today, the air is brisk, dry, and sharp, with the scent of some sweat, leather, and iron. You're standing in a dusty clearing beside a field tent, nothing decorative, nothing delicate. Just canvas flapping against the morning wind, stakes hammered deep into the dirt, and the low murmur of some men preparing for something. This is a war camp breakfast, Navasan says, fastening her scarf tighter against the breeze. Not fancy, not slow, but it does the job. Inside the tent, a small fire flickers under a soot-blackened pot. The smoke is thin and determined, rising up through a flap in the canvas roof. Around it sit 6 men cross-legged, rubbing sleep from their eyes and rolling their shoulders. Their faces are weathered. Their fingers are wrapped in linen. You join them. You nod. They nod back. The food arrives fast. First, lentil stew, spooned into wide, shallow bowls. It's thick, flecked with cracked wheat and chunks of onion, wild garlic, and, if your taste buds are correct, dried sour cherry. It's cooked overnight on embers so low it practically hums. The flavor is deep, slightly tart, and impossibly satisfying. You're handed a watch flatbread, baked directly on coals, speckled with ash, and blistered from uneven heat. You tear it, scoop up the lentils, and eat. It's hot. It's real. It hits your stomach like a soldier settling into armor. Next comes a hot slab of smoked meat. Thin and leathery, soaked in vinegar and spices overnight. Not elegant, but strong, chewy, salty, almost sour. The kind of meat you'd eat when rations are tight and your next meal depends on winning a battle. Navasan points to a row of ceramic flasks lined against the tent wall. They contain vinegar water, fermented barley drink, and a thick yogurt broth known as ab-mast, diluted, salted, and meant to rehydrate without overfilling. You sip cautiously. The yogurt one cuts through the heaviness of the stew like sunlight through storm clouds. There's no ceremony here. No prayers. No toasts. Just the quiet rhythm of chewing, swallowing, moving on. You ask if this meal would have been typical for Achaemenid soldiers. One of the older men shrugs. More or less. Add horse meat if the battle went bad. Add dates if someone got lucky. Historical records do confirm that Persian armies were highly organized, and so were their food supplies. Rations were calculated, portable, and surprisingly varied dried legumes, preserved meat. Yogurt, paste, barley, biscuits, vinegar, even dried fruit. Some scholars suggest Persian war camps ate better than many cities, thanks to the efficiency of satrapal logistics, governors tasked with provisioning troops. Others argue that while officers feasted, common soldiers got by on barley and lentils and hope. You try another dish. Barley porridge, with crushed coriander and wild thyme. No butter, just herbs grain and a hint of salt. It's functional, but good. The kind of food that keeps you alive and alert. Now comes a treat. Unexpected, a small bundle of pressed dates and sesame, wrapped in a fig leaf and tied with thread. A soldier's sweet. You bite in, and it's chewy, nutty, and spiced with a bit of a cinnamon and a clove. You're told it's eaten before battle for what energy, but also bravery. You wonder aloud, did they eat this before charging into war? Navasan's voice lowers, sometimes after. A hush passes through the tent. Not ominous, just remembering. One man tosses a pinch of haush salt into the fire. It crackles sparks. A small gesture. A superstition, perhaps. or a quiet act of gratitude for making it through another night. You're handed a pouch of chickpeas, roasted with sumac and coriander. Trail food. You chew slowly. They crunch loudly in your mouth, then soften. Another man stirs a pot of Watts yogurt stew, ash-emassed again, this time thinned with water, and poured over broken bread. It's light cooling and surprisingly welcome. Soldiers need contrast. Even warriors get tired of meat. Someone passes a bowl of onion jam, cooked down with vinegar and crushed raisins. It's sweet, sticky, and so fragrant it draws a curious goat to the tent flap. The jam is eaten with flatbread and a slice of sharp cheese. The flavor is oddly elegant. You can imagine a general eating this before drawing up battle lines. You ask about morning rituals. The answer is few. Breakfast in war is not for pleasure, one man says. It's for memory, and for knowing your stomach is full when your mind is not. You sip hot water with a sliver of dried lime. It's sharp, reviving, like someone tapping your temple. You imagine now a line of soldiers, each with a pouch, each with a handful of yogurt rocks, a flatbread folded in oilcloth, and a few dates in a waxed leaf. It's not feasting, it's fueling, but it still carries intention. You finish the last spoonful of lentils, scraping the bowl clean with bread. Navasan stands. "Come," she says. "Let's eat with the women who raised those soldiers." You blink, already. But then again, breakfast doesn't wait for battle. Nor for you. You return from the war camp feeling heavier. Not from food, but from my weightier thoughts of endurance survival, the stoicism baked into every hardened crust of that barley bread. But now, as you follow Navasan through a narrow passage shaded with grapevines, the scent changes. It's warm again. Softer. Almost a familiar. You duck into a sunlit courtyard, not grand or ceremonial, but practical. The domestic heart of a Persian home. Here, breakfast doesn't come from a scroll of royal recipes or the iron rules of army life. It comes from generations of women. Mothers, grandmothers, aunts, daughters, each with their own rituals, inherited gestures, and quietly powerful command of the morning. This, Navasan says as she hands you a damp cloth to wipe your hands, is where real Persian breakfasts begin, and where they're protected. The first sound you hear is the rhythmic slap of dough being shaped soft, wet, and full of air. A younger woman, perhaps 17, presses and turns the dough with hypnotic focus. An older woman beside her stokes the flame beneath the tanur. Smoke curls upward, carrying the scent of wheat yeast and something buttery and clean. Nearby, a kettle simmers with rose water, mint, and black tea leaves. The fragrance is so comforting you almost exhale in relief before sipping. The first round of food is laid out. A small bowl of Thai salted yogurt, whipped to a soft cloud and topped with a swirl of olive oil. Fresh herbs, again, but this time in bigger bunches. Basil, mint, dill, tarragon. You eat them like salad folded into bread with cheese. A stack of lavash. Still hot, still steaming, folded into gentle corners. You take a bite, you chew, and you realize this food was made with the kind of hands that know exactly when dough is ready by feel alone. Navasan introduces the women, the matriarch, her 2 daughters, 1 daughter-in-law, and a cousin visiting from the next village. Together, they prepare in every meal in the household. Not out of obligation, but out of something older than duty. This is what keeps the house beating. You ask how long they've cooked like this. They smile at one another. One answers, "Since the stories were still new." Now comes a quiche spread of butter. But this one's different. Churned with grated cucumber and dried mint. You smear it on bread, top it with a quiche slice of cold boiled egg, and it tastes like waking up inside a garden. There's also a soft cheese rolled in, dried rose petals, and crushed walnuts. It crumbles like feta but tastes slightly floral. It's eaten with radish slices, or sometimes layered with thin shavings of cooked beetroot. Then comes a humble yet iconic dish, halim-e-ardan, a wheat porridge slow-cooked with milk and finished with a drizzle of grape molasses. You eat it warm, stirred with a wooden spoon that's been passed down through 3 generations. Every bite is deeply soothing. This isn't food meant to dazzle. It's food meant to hold you. A new dish is prepared while you sit. Bread soaked in tea, specifically the leftover ends of yesterday's flatbread torn into pieces and floated in sweet black tea with a touch of saffron and cardamom. You're hesitant, but then you taste it. It's wool pudding. It's memory. It's the kind of thing you feed children the sick or anyone whose heart needs repair. You ask what time breakfast usually begins. They laugh. When the sun says so. You realize this is a household where clocks don't rule, morning smells do, bread ready, milk, warm herbs rinsed. Then it's time. Someone passes a bowl of steamed rice, mixed with dill and some broad beans, a dish usually reserved for lunch, but today it's reborn as breakfast. Topped with a soft boiled egg and served with yogurt, it's more nourishing than any smoothie you've ever had. Historians often overlook the domestic sphere in grand narratives of Persian history. They write of kings and campaigns, but not of how eggs were poached, how milk was stored in goat stomachs, or how bread was made soft again with tea. But these women, they've been writing the unwritten chapters every morning. You ask if the recipes are ever written down. One of the daughters smiles and pats her chest. "We write them here," she says. You sit in silence for a moment, watching as one of them crumbles dried sumac into a yogurt bowl, gently turning it into a swirl of white and red. Another one plucks dried apricots from a clay jar and warms them slightly before setting them beside slices of sheep cheese. And then laughter. One of the cousins tells a story, something about dropping the butter into the cistern last week. Everyone groans. The grandmother throws a towel across the courtyard. You realize this too as part of breakfast. The laughter, the scolding, the unspoken choreography of women moving around one another like planets in orbit, preparing a meal they've prepared 10,000 times, never the same way twice. You eat a final bite of bread soaked in molasses and crushed walnut. It's sticky, sweet, satisfying. Someone hands you a glass of warm yogurt drink, lightly salted with crushed mint and the faintest whisper of garlic. You drink, you breathe, you close your eyes. This was not royal. It was not sacred. It was not battle-tested. It was our home. It's afternoon now, but the sun is soft, almost sleepy, and the courtyard hums with that slow, post-meal contentment that only happens when no one is in a hurry. The grandmother snores lightly on a bench. A cat stretches in a sunbeam like it invented comfort. But your day isn't done. Now, Navasan says, stepping out of the shade with a basket in one hand and a walking stick in the other, you meet the diplomats. You blink. The who. She grins. The ones who came from elsewhere. And the ones who had to feed them without starting a war. You follow her into town, if you can call it that. A cluster of courtyard homes, a modest wound bazaar, and a small square where children chase one another around piles of pomegranates. But at the edge of it stands a house built for guests. Slightly grander, a little more symmetrical, and very clearly designed to impress. This, she says, is where we served the ambassadors, merchants, and envoys. Breakfast, it turns out, wasn't just a personal ritual. In the Persian Empire, especially during the Achaemenid and later Sasanian periods, it was also a performance of diplomacy. And the food. The food was the script. You're ushered inside by a young cook who has already begun laying out the diplomatic spread. Everything is placed just so. Symmetrical, balanced, intentional. At the center, a large platter of fragrant rice cakes, scented with rose water and cinnamon, stacked in a pyramid and topped with candied orange peel. These are not everyday items. These are culinary ambassadors meant to signal refinement, generosity, and abundance. To one side, a tray of boiled quail eggs, peeled halved and dusted with sumac and saffron salt. On the other, dried fruits, figs, apricots, mulberries, and tiny green plums arranged in concentric circles around a bowl of herbed yogurt dip. You're told that these displays weren't just about hospitality. They were coded messages. Figs meant peace. Quail eggs implied vigilance. Rosewater cakes, those were a kind of edible apology. The cook hands you a glass of diluted pomegranate juice, mixed with grape vinegar, and a touch of honey. You sip. It's sweet tart and oddly formal. This is what they gave Lydian's Navasan says when asking for gold. The historical records from Greek visitors, especially Herodotus, often note the white luxury and restraint of Persian meals. The Persians didn't believe in glutting their guests. Instead, they believed in Maoism symbolism and subtle seduction through food. You're handed a poached slice of cold roasted eggplant, spread with a yesh mint and yogurt sauce, topped with toasted sesame seeds. It's soft, rich, smoky. Someone says it was often served to diplomats before negotiations to cool tempers. There's a dish of herbed barley salad, tossed with quiche fennel, green onions, and a splash of orange blossom vinegar. Refreshing, crisp, and designed to awaken without overwhelming. Then the centerpiece arrives, a shallow copper bowl of creamy chickpeas, mashed with geese olive oil, tahini, and preserved lemon, sprinkled with ground coriander. It looks familiar, almost like hummus, but it's different, deeper, tangier, meant to be eaten with warm flatbread or raw cabbage leaves. You give this, the cook says, when you want the guest to leave full, but still want them to come back. Historians still debate the exact menus of Persian diplomatic meals. Did the king truly send baskets of saffron cakes to Athens? Were envoys really weighed after meals to ensure they'd been fed generously? One thing is certain. Food was politics. And breakfast in particular was often the first gesture of goodwill in delicate conversations. You're served steamed pears, next sliced, cooled, and dusted with yeast clove sugar. Soft, floral, precise. They sit on a plate ringed with crushed almonds and petals of wild rose. Every element has intention. Every flavor is both nourishment and message. You ask what happened if the guest didn't eat. They left with enemies, the cook says flatly. Navasan chuckles. A final dish appears, a tiny omelet, folded neatly, and filled with dried fruit, nuts, and herbs. It's sweet and savory, a flavor map of Persia in a single bite. You chew slowly. You can feel the message. We are powerful. We are generous. Don't cross us. You sit back, your stomach full of diplomacy, your mind spinning with etiquette. Even posture matters here. You're told guests weren't allowed to eat reclining. Only the careless lean, someone says. A young apprentice refills your cup with mint and cucumber tea, and you realize this breakfast isn't about you. It's about what they want you to think of them. But still, you can't deny you feel honored, welcomed, intrigued. You turn to Navasan. Who would have cooked this for a real king? She doesn't hesitate. A woman just like my aunt, but with a better kitchen. You laugh, but not entirely. Because what you've learned today is this. The most powerful Persian weapon was not the sword. It was the spoon. By now you've eaten with soldiers, queens, diplomats, and gardeners of the soul. You've dined beneath palm trees and beside smoke pits. But as the days pass and breakfast begins to feel like the lens through which you understand the entire empire, something curious begins to happen. You notice what's not being said, in whispered side comments, in jokes, in the plates people pass over quickly. There are key taboos around the breakfast table, unspoken rules, beliefs, and superstitions older than written recipes. So today, Navasan meets you not with a satchel of food, but with a grin. We're going to talk about what you don't eat. She leads you to a shaded patio, quiet, private, half-lit by morning sun, filtered through reed blinds. The table is simple. Just tea, a bit of bread, and a bowl of sweet yogurt. You sit. She begins. You never eat burnt bread on a wedding day. It's the first rule. Burnt bread is an omen. Charred edges, once admired in some regions for their toasty flavor, were feared elsewhere for symbolizing bitterness, arguments, or even infertility. One old saying translates to, burnt bread burns the bed. You chew more cautiously now. She continues, don't cut an egg before sunrise. Why? Because it invites misfortune. Eggs long associated with fertility and rebirth must remain whole until the sun has fully risen, to avoid dividing the day before it's begun. In some villages, breakfast eggs are even tapped on the floor before boiling to wake them up properly. No pomegranate seeds spilled after dark. Pomegranates are sacred. Dropping them at night is believed to invite restless spirits. If a seed rolls away, it must be found and buried under herbs or rubbed on the forehead. to neutralize bad luck. You glance at yesterday's pomegranate remains with new wariness. Another rule: don't taste pickles on a Tuesday. It's not clear why, but in certain parts of the empire, pickles were believed to sour the soul on that particular day. Some blamed planetary alignments. Others just remembered what happened to Aunt Soraya after a Tuesday cucumber. You don't ask further. You sip your tea. She leans in. Don't speak of dreams before bread. In many Persian homes, morning dreams were considered fragile, powerful, even prophetic. But they must be grounded with food before being shared. Telling your dream on an empty stomach meant it might leave you floating away before it could anchor into meaning. You think back to a dream you had the night before. You say nothing. She continues. Salt spilled during breakfast is bad luck, but sugar spilled, that's a blessing. Because sugar draws sweetness back into the day, she says. So households often fake spilled a bit of sugar at weddings, births, or new ventures. Intentional clumsiness is an art. There's an ancient superstition about cracked teacups. Drinking from one in the morning was believed to split your intentions for the day. Worse, it could cause family division. So cracked cups were often smashed immediately, the pieces buried beneath fruit trees. She holds up your cup. Solid, she says, knocking on it once. You exhale in relief. Then there's the forbidden pairing, garlic and dairy. Many households forbid combining them at breakfast, not for taste, but because it's said to confuse the body. Garlic, warming and fiery, was believed to clash with cooling, moist dairy. Together, they upset the inner balance and could sour the liver. Science. Maybe not, but the respect is real. You ask if these rules change over time. Navasan nods. Always. Some are forgotten. Others come back stronger. Like the new belief that my leftover bread must never be thrown away. Instead, it should be dried, stored, or even fed to animals with a blessing. Bread, after all, is still called Nani Jan, the bread of the soul. Discarding it without care is like wasting memory. You sip more tea. There's also the rule of first bites. The first bite of your morning meal must be taken with the right hand, ideally with a clear thought in mind. Wishes made with the first bite are said to carry all day. You rewind in your mind to every bite you've taken. Most of them involved confusion or blissful distraction. You vow to be more intentional tomorrow. One final rule: never eat alone if you can help it. This isn't a superstition, it's a cultural truth. Even today, many Persians go out of their way to share food, even a small bite, even a symbolic gesture, because eating together ensures your joy is multiplied and your sorrows halved. You look across the table at Navasan, who's now cutting an apple with surprising precision. She hands you a slice. Here, she says. So your worries stay with me for the day. You smile. You eat. You believe her. You're quiet the next morning. Not because you're tired, but because the weight of everything you've eaten, learned, felt, and remembered is starting to settle in your chest like a second kind of hunger. A hunger not for food, but for understanding how something so small, breakfast, can hold so much of a civilization inside it. Today, Navasan tells you you're going to trace the changes. From Cyrus, she says, to the last Sasanian king. Let's see what changed and what never dared to. You return to a familiar spot, the central courtyard. But instead of one meal, 3 separate spreads are laid out before you. Each represents a different era. The Achaemenid table, 5533 BCE. This breakfast is rich in grain dairy and dried fruit. A simple porridge of barley and cracked wheat bubbles slowly in a wide pot, sweetened with a touch of honey and dried figs. Alongside it sits a bowl of salted yogurt, already thickening under the morning sun. There's no saffron, no elaborate spice blend, just clarity. Flatbread is tough, baked on fire-smoothed stones and torn rather than sliced. You chew slowly, tasting the work that went into every bite. You sip diluted wine, not because it's luxurious, but because in the Achaemenid world, wine was a breakfast drink, if properly thinned. Just a few sips, and you feel a strange kinship with ancient courtiers staring down tax scrolls. Most of the flavor here comes from preservation. Pickled garlic, dried walnuts, sun-dried white cheese. There's no show, just survival and intention. The Parthian table, Chon BCE to CE, this one feels softer, more infused with outside influence. There's a platter of steamed rice with herbs, something you didn't see in the earlier meal. The Greeks. It seems brought new preferences, also on the table, stuffed vine leaves, smoked fish, and a spread of dried fruits pressed into patties, with spices like clove and cinnamon. You taste a spoonful of milky lentil soup, laced with what can only be garum, a Roman-style fermented fish sauce. It's not exactly Persian, and yet it works. Tea is still absent. Instead, there's a drink made from toasted barley steeped in warm water with a splash of grape syrup. It tastes like the crossroads of cultures. The bread is thinner now, almost crepe-like, cooked quickly on a metal plate. You fold it around dates and cheese, then dip it in rosewater yogurt. It feels like the beginning of breakfast as comfort, not just survival. The Sasanian table, 261 CE. Now things begin to resemble the flavors you've grown familiar with. The war rice is more central, fluffed with dill, turmeric, and onions. The war tea finally appears, black strong and sweetened with rock sugar. You smile. You've missed it. There are herb omelets, cold yogurt salads, and slices of lamb sausage wrapped in grape leaves. A tray of tiny saffron pastries rests beside a pot of cucumber and mint yogurt. It's refined, balanced, luxurious but not arrogant. Even the serving bowls are more ornate, painted clay-shaped brass, polished stone. By now, breakfast has become a ceremony, not just a necessity. You bite into a preserved orange slice dipped in honey. It melts. You almost hum. Navasan pours you another tea. Now you see it, she says. You do. The ingredients shift sometimes subtly, sometimes boldly. New flavors arrive. Old ones fade. But some elements remain. Anchoring Persian breakfast across centuries. Barley and wheat. Yogurt and herbs. Flatbread fresh and dried. Fruit not as dessert, but as part of the meal. Even across invasions, dynastic shifts, and changing gods. The morning meal remained a tether, a quiet defiance of time. Historians argue over whether these changes represent cultural erosion or evolution. But in this courtyard, the answer feels clear. Persian breakfast absorbed the world, but it was never erased. You ask what the modern version looks like now. Navasan smiles. Come tomorrow, I'll show you what we kept and what we invented. You nod. Because now more than ever, you want to see how breakfast lives in today. The next morning is quiet, not ceremonial, not royal, not rustic, just every day. The kind of morning where people stretch a little slower, blink at the sunlight through curtains, and forget briefly what century they're in. But breakfast still comes, and this time it's a modern. You're in a small urban kitchen, clay replaced by tile fire by gas, but the bones of breakfast still unmistakably Persian. Navasan hands you a glass of warm tea, sweetened lightly with nabat, rock sugar on a stick, and flavored with a bruised cardamom pod. You sip. The taste is timeless. It whispers to every other morning you've had here. The table holds lavash and sangak, bread bought fresh from a corner bakery not an hour ago, feta-style cheese, firm salty cut into cubes, fresh herbs, because of course, mint basil, green onions, still eaten by the handful or wrapped in bread with cheese, cucumber and tomato salad, bright and crisp splashed with lemon and olive oil, honey, grape molasses, and fig jam served in glass bowls. Eggs, soft-boiled and sprinkled with sumac. You sit, you eat. And it all feels both ancient and new. Now comes something you haven't seen before. Toast. Yes, actual toast, but topped with labneh, a strained yogurt cheese, a drizzle of date syrup, and a sprinkle of sesame. It's fusion, it's comfort. It's Persia in a cafe. Beside it, store-bought halva, but served lovingly. A slice of rolled omelet with fresh tarragon and dill. Even a small plate of black olives stuffed with garlic and orange peel. The flavors are gentler, perhaps. The spices less aggressive. But the nuance, the intentionality, the hospitality, still here. Navasan places a tiny glass bowl in front of you. Inside is a single ghee saffron custard topped with crushed pistachios. "You don't need this," she says, "but I made it anyway." You smile. That's modern breakfast. That's a modern Persia. It's not always slow. It's not always sacred. But it still remembers. Even in high-rises and apartment blocks, even in Tehran's cafes or Isfahan's courtyards, people still rise and begin the day with bread, tea, cheese, herbs, and see a deep, unspoken continuity. Some families still burn esfand in the mornings. Others still soak dried yogurt balls in warm water and serve it with bread and onion. And though the settings change, the appliances, the pacing, the phone buzzing in the corner, the gestures survive. You think back on the path you've walked. From my royal saffron feasts to my pickled breakfasts in farmhouses, from my milky porridge by firelight to high diplomatic trays designed to charm, all the way to this quiet kitchen with soft tile underfoot. And you realize Persian breakfast was never about time. It was about anchoring the soul, reminding people of who they are, where they belong, and what they hope for. You take your final bite of warm bread with quince jam and close your eyes. Outside, the city starts to wake. Children shout. Vendors open shutters. A moped buzzes by. But here in this tiny kitchen with a table big enough for meaning you feel still, full, rooted. Now that breakfast is done, and the plates have been cleared, and the last cup of tea has gone cool on the windowsill, breathe. Let everything soften now. The flavors, the stories, the spice lingering on the back of your tongue. Let the images roll back gently. Sunrise on stone walls in Persepolis, the hiss of bread on the side of a clay oven, the silence of soldiers spooning lentils before battle. Remember the women folding herbs into yogurt, the soft crunch of fresh cucumbers, the prayer whispered before the first bite. Let them all blur now. Just impressions. Just warmth. Close your eyes if you haven't already. You've wandered far this evening across eras and empires, through smoke and saffron and barley and time, and now you're back in your own bed. Still, quiet, fed, and maybe, just maybe, with a tiny seed of memory tucked inside you. Something old. Something human. Something that still smells faintly of rosewater and bread. Thank you for coming along. Sleep well.